نبدأ بتلخيص خلاصة مداولات هذا اليوم الطويل. الدكتور الأستاذ محمد فاعور يعطينا ملخص لأهم ما قيل، ما قلتم وما لم تقولوا، وإن شاء الله يعني لا بأس من أنه إن كان هنالك أي ملاحظات أو تعليقات لن تكون في هذه الجلسة، ولكن يمكن كتابتها لاحقاً حتى يستطيع أن يضمنها في الكتاب الذي سيصدر عن الندوة إن شاء الله. دكتور محمد فاعور.
شكراً أستاذ أحمد. As you probably would know that summarizing a long day of discussions with too many points that are made will not be an easy job, particularly that I did not have a look at the papers beforehand. What I'm going to do, I'm going to look at some of at the points that I think were made and are major, and at the suggestions that were made at the end. I will sure miss many points, but hopefully this will be taken care of in the proceedings. Essentially, the discussion centered on a labor demand analysis. And there are common points that were made by the speakers, starting from the keynote speakers. I will talk about the two sides, the labor side and the education side. And I will first talk about the status of education, status of the labor market as presented by various speakers, and then talk about their suggestions for fixing the mismatch between education system and the labor market. One issue that is common, has been repeatedly presented, is that we have a problem of quality of education. And many aspects of quality were presented, talking about curriculum, quality of graduates, teachers, unpreparedness, or lack of academic and pedagogical qualifications. There is talk about that the region has the highest youth unemployment rate, especially that of women, compared to other regions. There's impressive progress in enrollment at all levels, secondary, tertiary, but the quality is below international standards. There has been a lot of data presented from international tests like TIMSS, which shows that probably close to half the students in TIMSS math for the 8th grade scored below the lowest international standard, which means that this group is practically not employable. There is high inefficiency. The percent of GDP spent on education is very high in the region compared to other regions. However, it's not translated to high quality of education. The share of enrollment in technical education as compared to total secondary education has decreased over time. Looking at the access to education, so generally speaking, it's good. There has been a lot of improvement, but access to employment is not. So there's a gap between the outcomes of the education system and the market demand. Yet there is no protest, that people are not protesting that they're not getting good education for the kids. Regarding the, one point that was made, I think it's also is important, is regarding the issue of double hurdles that the system has. That students first have the problem of developing competitive skills and knowledge, and then they have another problem or another hurdle, which is getting employed. if you fix the education system, should you fix the education system or change the structure of the economy? The general wisdom is that you need to work on both the education system and the economy. Some of the problems that were mentioned regarding the economy or the nature of the economic sectors are the following. First, the public sector shapes expectations of different actors. The private sector is not engaged in the education system. It's pretty much isolated. However, the education system is doing what it was designed to do. Universities' role, what is the role of the universities? There was a point made that the role of the university is not really to graduate employees, but rather to graduate students with critical thinking, students who can contribute to the economy and be good citizens. And that universities have both an economic and societal impact, although the two major roles of universities are teaching and research, but in both teaching and research, they contribute to knowledge, they contribute to the economy, and they contribute to generally to knowledge, to development of knowledge and transfer of technology. There are problems with the demand aspect. You have weak private sector. There's preference for cheap labor. There are some problems with market clearance. There has been also some reservation about the statistics used by the ILO, particularly the index of dissimilarity regarding unemployment. So why are there skills gaps between, why is education a barrier in a way to the public, to employability? A number of factors were mentioned here. First, the nature of the public sector, nature of the private sector, which was mentioned earlier, and that the single most important factor in getting a job, according to some surveys, is wasta, or we can say there is a deficit of meritocracy. What should we do? Some of the points that were mentioned as conditions for change include the following. First, that since we have a gap in information and knowledge, that we need to close the information and knowledge gaps between education and employment. We need to do monitoring and evaluation, dissemination of data, reform of assessment and certification. Another important condition is to replace the logic of selection with the logic of learning. Currently, students are selected based on tests and based on getting degrees. It's important to provide opportunities for every student, reform the school leaving examination system, focus on soft skills paradigm, and also the importance of technical and vocational training. Another condition for change is to make employability count through renewed partnership with the private sector. And this requires institutionalizing communication channels, having a private provision of technical and vocational training, and also providing second chance options outside the education system, such as entrepreneurship training, wage subsidies, and home-based work. Other suggestions for improving the system talks about the need for comprehensive change. And this requires structural change in the education systems, such as in the case of Kuwait, establishing a High Council of Education in charge of planning and having a national strategy with national standards and key performance indicators, and this should be implemented by the Ministry of Education to design operational plans and to be implemented by national centers, setting up measurement and evaluation and accreditation organizations. Education should be a priority in the political agenda of governments, and labor laws should be changed, and there should be encouragement of technical and vocational training and improvement of their standards, and also emphasis on scientific research. One other suggestion, one was that we need a new social contract. That the social contract that currently exists has outlived its usefulness, which is based on the rentier system. However, this will face hurdles because there are people with vested interests who have benefited from the current system. In the last session, there were some ideas of what could be done, and one of them was to replace the current public employment with cash transfers. Since public agencies today, like in the case of Kuwait or other GCC countries, they hire the overwhelming majority of national employees, and this is problematic, so the suggestion is to reduce the number of employees there and replace them with cash transfers, and that could help the private sector. Another suggestion was to stop free education, and that would lead to a better accountability and solving some of the problems that we have regarding quality of education, such as teacher absenteeism, and also to regulate private sector tutoring. However, this suggestion is not meant to be something to be implemented immediately, but that could be implemented incrementally over time and piecemeal. One other suggestion is to have sustained partnerships among government, business, and education providers, and to get away from the rentier system, allowing more competition in the private sector for skills and resources, and to have more autonomy in decision-making at schools, and to have better information system, more data collection on quality, on performance, that will help parents, providers, and community plan for better education systems. I will stop here.
شكرا دكتور. الآن دكتور أستاذة إنجر تفضلي.
Thank you very much. It's hard to find a way to conclude on this, but I thought I could come up with some conundra or dichotomies. Let me give 8 that I think I have heard today. First, this is an old story. We've talked about this for years, but actually the tenor of the conversation today is different. There's an honesty and a directness in it. That's the first dichotomy that or the first sort of discovery of today that I hear. Second, there's a need for a strong government role in making these policy reforms happen, but this can only happen with strong private sector engagement in the sector that is open and facilitated, not closed and regulated. Third, this is a system that is geared toward carrying out a piece of paper credentials, which are needed. But what we need to have happen is to drive skills home. Skills in the broad context that they have been discussed all day today. Fourth, there's a need for some at the top level, champions, policy reforms at the governmental level, but there's an urgent need to drive demand at the bottom, from parents, from students, for the kind of quality that parents and students have given voice to in every survey that we can count. Fifth, education is free, but the price of education, that free education, the price of that poor free education is exceptionally high, because that child pays for that poor education for the rest of his or her life. Six, there's a need to do something quietly, incrementally, but these incremental steps will add up to a big bang. And that big bang is the one that we heard in the last session. 7, we need to have these skills for employability, but skills for employability is not enough. Employability, in fact, the very same skills said Moreno in the morning, said those skills are the very same that drive citizenships. In fact, the skills for employability are the same skills that drive citizenship and identity. 7th, we have too much vested interest, too much merit deficit, but we therefore need to have a very active shift towards transparent labor market. And my very last point would be that, no, not quite, that I have 2 more. Teachers are teaching in double shifts, one for which they get paid by the state, the other for which they get paid by the parents. But when we look at the outcome, kids learn half of what their peers in Asia or Europe or elsewhere learn. And finally, therefore, if we want to make those shifts, we need to understand that there is an Arab story. There is an Arab story that is common to the Arab world, which is why we've been convened here today by the Arab Fund. But there's a differentiation in each country, has its unique journey and its unique story to travel, and yet there's a red thread that binds them all together. And so, if I have to close out today, these would be some quick thoughts that just listening today, I thought constructed sort of some of the contrasts that we've heard today. And I think, therefore, when I look at what is our research agenda looking ahead, it is a very important one, and I think we have all the elements here. The final plea, therefore, will be that if I have heard today, what I've heard today has been the most transparent and honest conversation about a real issue that every child in this region is disserviced by. And so the order of the day has to walk out from this session and to have honest conversation in the media, with the politicians, with parents, with education ministries, because those children deserve a much better shake than what they're getting today. And so in my closing remarks, I would say that each one of us has an obligation, no, a duty to take that message forward as we go forward from here on. And so just finally, I would want to say, I would really like to thank everyone who has come this far, everyone who has contributed in terms of papers, people who have facilitated, moderated, argued, postulated today, because that is what has created the knowledge here. I think that the IRF and the Research Forum overall and the Arab Fund, having had the wisdom to call for this Arab Development Symposium, has really created something unique. This is the 3rd one in a series. It's my 2nd, also my last. And I think that there's a lot that is happening here that is really, really very useful. I take note that in the last one I was in, there was a critique that there were too few women researchers and participants. I've been counting. I think we're about 30%, so still some way to go. We get a sort of C+. But I think when we grade ourselves, we can move forward and get to gender parity, or in education where women are the leaders, we should actually have had 70% women in the room. But that will be for next time. But I do want to thank our friends, Dr. Osman, and through you again, Dr. Abdel Latif Al-Hamid, for a wonderful session today and for all the hard work that we've had. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Inger. Thank you. لا أعتقد أنه بقي ما يقال بعد كل هذا ما قيل وما سمعتم وما سمعنا منكم. إحنا في الختام لا يسعنا إلا أن يعني نتقدم بالشكر والتقدير لكم جميعا، لمقدمي الأوراق والمعقبين والمناقشين والمتداولين، وإن شاء الله سيصدر كتاب هذه الندوة وسيعرض عليكم إذا كان لديكم أي ملاحظات أو إضافات. الأخ المشكور الدكتور محمد فاعور سيتولى مهمة شاقة، سنعطيه إن شاء الله تسجيل كامل لهذه الندوة حتى يستطيع أن يتابع بشيء من التفصيل كل مستوصياتكم ومقترحاتكم. إحنا نأمل مخلصين أن تكون هذه التوصيات يعني نبراسا يهتدى به في تطوير التعليم في المنطقة العربية. وأيضا لا يسعنا إلا نتقدم بالشكر والتقدير إلى البنك الدولي وإلى الأستاذة الكبيرة إنجر أندرسون التي خدمت في منطقة الشرق الأوسط بجد وإخلاص، واستطاعت أن تقدم الكثير لهذه المنطقة ولعلاقتها مع المجموعة العربية، مجموعة التنسيق من الصناديق العربية والمؤسسات التمويلية. وإذ نقدر لها هذا الجهد نشكرها ونتمنى لها التوفيق في مهمتها الجديدة إن شاء الله، وهي تترك البنك الدولي إلى مؤسسة عالمية مرموقة لتقودها بكفاءة ومقدرة. نتمنى لها التوفيق ونتمنى أن يجمعنا بها الأيام دائما إن شاء الله. الشكر لكم جميعا ومعذرة على الإطالة، وإن شاء الله يعني تعود بالسلامة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.